The Skechers SKX Joel Embiid 1, or the JE1 for short, represents Joel Embiid's first signature shoe since his failed partnership with Under Armour. But the real question is, are they actually any good? Let's find out. Kicking things off is the packaging for the Joel Embiid 1, and I wanted to get into the packaging just because this is the first signature shoe we're seeing from Skechers for a basketball player, a professional athlete. They have a lot of athletes on their label like Julius Randle and obviously Joel Embiid, but I haven't seen an actual signature shoe from them. But the packaging is not bad at all. You actually have the constellation or web pattern that is found on the lid of the box, which is actually identical to the one that's found on the upper of the shoe and the outsole of the shoe. You also have a label denoting the technologies that they're using on the shoe. So you have the Goodyear rubber being used on the outsole. You have what they're calling 5th gen or 5th gen cushioning for the foam. And then they actually have Skechers Move foam as well. But you have the JE1 hologram logo in the middle of the box, again denoting his signature logo. But the packaging itself is actually pretty nice. It's obviously custom to this specific shoe. The design for the JE1 is a low top constructed shoe, and it's coming in two colorways. One in a lime green color that is launched exclusively at Lapstone & Hammer where I got the shoe. And then this black pink colorway, which is kind of reminiscent of like those Galaxy colorways that we see from other brands. The upper of the shoe, as I said earlier, features that constellation or web pattern. As Skechers is calling it, it's a 3D printed cage on that upper. It's obviously designed, but it's also functional in the way of containment and things like that over that mesh upper. The mesh is obviously very soft, so you're gonna need some way to kind of keep your foot contained on that footbed. Beyond that, you have the JE logo on the tongue of the shoes, and you actually have mismatched insoles. One insole is denoting the Skechers basketball word mark. The other insole has a finger pointed toward a star, and I want to say that is probably a nod to Joel Embiid's home country of Cameroon, so I'm assuming that's what that means. Last but not least, you have an incredibly exaggerated heel counter. This heel counter is kind of reminiscent of the Nike GT Cut 2, I believe it is, but this heel counter is supposed to obviously be functional, but also represent three pillars of Joel Embiid's life, which is heritage, sport, and family. Overall, the design for the JE1 is not bad at all. I have never owned a pair of Skechers, but when they started releasing their basketball shoes, I was intrigued, but not intrigued enough to take the dive and buy the shoes. But this particular model, obviously I am from Philly, I'm a Sixers fan, I'm a Joel Embiid fan, and this shoe particularly obviously piqued my interest for those reasons, but also the design is very nice. I think that 3D printed cage on the upper is different. I actually do like it, and it is functional as well. Now, the materials on the JE1 are just okay. There's nothing premium about the shoe. There's no raw materials used or anything like that, and that's okay. The most important thing is whatever materials that the brand is using, as long as they come together as a cohesive unit to serve the purpose that they're for, I think that's the most important part. And this shoe does come together pretty well in terms of the materials used and how they fit on your foot. Now, a couple of the highlights for the JE1 is obviously first and foremost that mesh upper is incredibly breathable. It conforms to your feet relatively quickly, and it's incredibly comfortable to wear. That 3D printed cage that they're using on that upper also obviously does a great job of not only looking nice, but also keeping your foot contained on that footbed. Moving to the outsole, the other highlight is that rubber that they're using is Goodyear rubber. And in terms of like durability, I do think that this is a outsole that's gonna last you a pretty long time, regardless if you're using it on the indoor or outdoor court. So I think those are the biggest highlights for me, but in terms of just the comfort of the shoe, the upper itself, it's an incredibly comfortable shoe on the upper. It's incredibly breathable, and I think a lot of people will be happy with the way they fit. Speaking of the fit is actually very, very good. I went with my true size 12, and they fit really well. In the beginning, they're a little bit snug, but as you play in them, you will realize quickly that they start to conform to your feet. And what that means for me though, is that I had to stop and actually retie my shoe, tie them a little bit tighter, cinch the laces a little bit more, because I was dealing with a little bit of heel slip. So that's something to keep in mind, that mesh upper does stretch out pretty quickly, but I think the fit itself is very, very good. Going true to size for most people, narrow feet, normal size feet, wide feet, everyone, regardless of what your foot type is, true to size is probably going to be the way to go. On the flip side, the containment is very good as well. That 3D printed cage, as I said earlier, does a great job of keeping your foot on the footbed. There was no point in time where I felt like if I made a cut, my feet were going to roll or fall off the footbed. You also have that outrigger built into the outsole. So you do have the outrigger, you have the 3D printed cage, that does a great job of just really keeping your foot on the footbed without really constricting your foot as well. Now, where things start to get a little bit dicey for me is the cushioning setup. They're using, I think is giving a little bit too much credit to call it a dual density setup, but they're using a dual cushioning setup. They have an insole, which is their move-in sole, and that move-in sole is, as they call it, resilient and responsive, meaning there's a long-lasting foam. The foam, as you can see here, doesn't appear to be anything substantial. It's not thicker than any other insole I've ever seen, and kind of looks pretty much along the lines of what I've seen before from other brands. Obviously, this insole is removable, so you can put your own insole in there if you want to, but I would not call this a highly responsive or quality insole. My opinion, I could be wrong. But then you go to the midsole, and they're using what they're calling 5th gen or 5th gen. I'm not really sure how they're pronouncing it, but 5th gen foam. And as they say again, it's responsive, it's resilient, it's comfortable, it's all those things. In my time in the shoe, however, it's a very different story. One of the biggest issues is that they put like a TPU shank right under the insole, and what that does is it makes the ride incredibly firm. Now, there's a lot of people who maybe prefer that ride. For me, they got very, very uncomfortable very, very quickly. I didn't feel any bounce, no matter how much I played in them. Like, it reminded me a little bit of nitro foam, but nitro foam tends to warm up and then get bouncy. This 5th gen or 5th gen foam from Skechers doesn't necessarily feel like it got bouncier or more responsive. It was firm the entire time I wore the shoes. And I think a big issue with that, or a big proponent of that issue I had, is the TPU shank, which is literally right under the drop-in insole. Now, that's something to keep in mind for people looking at this shoe. Is generally, if you're looking for a shoe or looking at a shoe that has a firm ride, you generally are getting court feel on the other end of that. Or if you're going with a really soft plush ride, you're kind of giving up court feel. And this shoe, because of how thick that midsole is, you're not only not getting court feel, but you're getting that firm ride, which for me, over my first few hours in the shoe, got incredibly uncomfortable to the point of like not being able to walk. The padding on my foot just really got sore, and I really do think it has to do with that TPU shank that's kind of like in the shoe. I don't know how far it extends, but I have to imagine that it's probably the length of the shoe for torsion support and stability, which it does have, but it kind of works against you while you're playing in the shoe. Capping things off is the traction for the JE1, and they actually did a pretty serviceable job of gripping the floor and giving me the confidence to make the cuts that I wanted to make without any fear of falling or slipping or anything like that. On the moderately dusty court, it did pick up a good amount of dust off that floor, but it didn't impede the shoe to make the grip or make the cuts that I wanted to make. So honestly, I think the traction was pretty good for this shoe, and if I wanted to get some more traction back, I could have simply just wiped the shoe and really just like enhanced the traction. But overall, I think the traction was fine. In terms of the durability, I think these shoes are going to last a very long time. This rubber on this outsole is relatively thick. The shoe itself is a little bit on the bottom heavy side, but I think in terms of durability, you can play in these outdoors or indoors, and you wouldn't really have to have any fear that you're going to run through that traction any quicker than you would on any other shoe. Now, when it comes to the recommendation for the Skechers JE1, I can't necessarily recommend this shoe at its price point of $130. I was really excited to get these on foot and try out the Skechers foam, and just in general try out a Skechers basketball shoe. Playing in these shoes, they really did get uncomfortable very quickly. The upper of the shoe really does a great job of conforming to your feet and are incredibly comfortable, incredibly breathable, and do a great job of like containment and things like that with that 3D printed cage. But where things start to fall apart is just the underfoot comfort, the midsole, that drop-in insole. None of it really does anything to help your feet. But again, $130, there's a lot of different options out there from different brands that provide a lot more in terms of support, cushioning, comfort, bounce, all that fun stuff. That would just about do it for this video. If there's anything I missed or anything you would like to know about the Skechers JE1, please leave a comment. If you liked this video, like it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. But if you really, really liked it, please hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend who might be into this type of content. Thank you all for watching, and you have a great day.